Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to the third Global Stop Cyberbullying Telesummit. My name is Tito Moraes. I'm one of the organizers together with Sonia Seixas and Luís Fernandes. I'm speaking to you from the city of Porto in Portugal, northern Portugal. And today, as usual, we'll have a guest. This is already the 14th, I believe, 13th or 14th session out of the 21 sessions that we'll be having this month of October. We started October 1st and we'll end on October 29th to celebrate Bullying Prevention Month and also Cybersecurity Month, which is also celebrated in some countries. So let me just give you some background on who I am, because some of you might not know me. I'm the co-author of this book, Cyberbullying, a Guide for Parents and Educators, that I wrote together with Sonia Seixas. Sonia Seixas is also here with us on a different city. This is the wonders of the internet. So welcome, Sonia, and feel free to open your mic.
Thank you so much, Tito. Hello, everyone. I'm here in Portugal, in the middle of Portugal, in Santarém, as usual. And we have in this day, it's the day of fighting cyberbullying, and it's a great honor to have our guest.
Yes, absolutely. So those that are following us, we are broadcasting to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and also YouTube. Feel free to let us know where you are following us. So as I was saying, Sonny is also the co-author of this book, which is named Plan Bullying, How to Erase Bullying from School, and is directed more towards teachers and educators. And together with Luís Fernandes, they also wrote Say No to Bullying, Don't Let Them Hurt You, a book that's more directed to youth. This magnificent duo made by Sonia and Luís Fernandes became a trio when we wrote this book, and also a chapter for this book published by the Council of Europe, Bullying Perspectives, Practices, and Insights. As I was saying, this is Bullying Prevention Month, and for that purpose, we are organizing this event. Today, we have a guest from the US, someone that I consider one of the most knowledgeable person when it comes to experts, when it comes to cyberbullying. His name is Samir Induja. He's from the US. And will be talking to us about cyberbullying best practices in prevention and response. So welcome, Samir, and thank you for having accepted our invitation to be part of this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Tito, and thank you also, Sonia, for co-hosting.
Yeah, we already have some people following us from Gaia. Gaia is a small city on the other side of the River Douro, which on one side is the city of Porto, the other side is Gaia. Abilio is a regular. I think it doesn't miss a single session with us. Thank you for being with us, Abilio. Samir, I can read the bio summary that you have sent us, but we usually ask guests to introduce themselves. So who is Samir Induja?
Well, I am an introverted fellow who loves to learn, and I have always spent time with youth in a variety of contexts while growing up. Whether it's community service projects, whether it's church groups, whether it's, high school mentorship programs. And so that has allowed me to care deeply about youth and their experience growing up. All the struggles of adolescence, all of the pressures related to peers and identity and hopes for the future. And so with that background, I've always loved technology, and I've been able to then sort of intersect the two, youth, tweens and teens, and then technology, especially when we're talking about social media and gaming platforms, just to see what are the benefits, what are the negatives, and how can we ensure that students feel safe and supported and can thrive when they're online because, as we all know, it's such a huge part of their lives.
Absolutely. And Samir, can you tell us if was there any particular reason or something that triggered you to get interested on cyberbullying in particular?
Yeah, that's such a great question. When I was up at Michigan State University with my colleague, Dr. Justin Passion, when we were graduate students, we shared the same office. And he studies juvenile justice, and I studied cybercrime at the time. And at the same time, we stumbled across an editorial in People Magazine, which is devoted to celebrities and life in general. But this editorial was all about this young boy named Ryan Halligan, who had taken his life after being bullied and cyberbullied. And so we wanted to figure out what was the story with this issue, and is it more than just an anecdotal incident, just a one-off incident? Is it occurring across a large proportion of youth? Are youth struggling with bullying, with cyberbullying? And are they dealing with emotional problems, behavioral problems, psychological problems, and of course, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, and attempts? And so from that point on, we've been studying it over, I believe, 20 distinct studies in the last 20 years. And it's been an amazing journey, and we're continuing to learn more. And with you, Tito, Sonia, so many other experts in this area, we're making progress. And so that's very encouraging.
Great to know. And can you let us know what you have been doing most recently? What have you been researching? What are your most recent concerns?
We've been looking at most recently the role of parenting, just to see if there is a specific style of parenting that maybe decreases the likelihood that your child will become an aggressor and harm others intentionally online. We've also been looking at the role of empathy, and specifically empathy as it relates to bias-based bullying and harassment. We know that unfortunately there has been an uptick in people being targeted because of their race, religion, ethnicity, of course, sexual orientation, gender identity, etc. And so, this is unacceptable, and we're trying to get to the bottom of what is leading to these issues, as well as what we can do to support those who might be targeted.
Okay, thank you. Luis Fernandes, who co-authored the book with us on cyberbullying, is also following us from Beja in the southern part of Portugal. And Carol Phillips as well. Carol was our guest yesterday. Nice to see you here, Carol. Great to have you here with us. And Ana Rita Carolindo says, good night, Tito Moraes and guests. And also António João Silva, who is usually also a regular that follows us from Braga. I know that you have prepared a presentation for us, so feel free to go. And we'll interrupt you if questions come up. If not, we'll ask questions in the end.
Can I interrupt now?
Yes, for sure.
I just want to say one thing, Samir. It's an honor for me to have you with us in this session, because when I started researching for our book on cyberbullying, the first articles I read were from you. So I think the first one, it was in 2006. It's called Bullies Moved from the Schoolyard. It was a preliminary analysis on cyberbullying, and since then numerous investigations that you have been carrying out on this area. So I think you are a reference for me and for many other researchers. So we are looking forward to hear from you. Thank you so much.
I subscribe to everything that Sonia has just said. And before turning on to you so that you proceed with your presentation, let me just say that Fernando Ferreira is also with us from Oliveira de Azeméis, and Rita Carolina Silva says, don't put your arms down, keep fighting to erase bullying. Thank you, Ana Rita. So let us bring the presentation. And the floor is yours, Samir. We look forward to hear you.
Thank you, Tito, and thank you, Sonia. And I simply want to say that I appreciate those kind words, but all of us truly are spending our professional lives to make a difference in this area because we care about young people, because we understand the challenges of technology and social media. And so all of our work is so equally important. And I also want to give a shout out to those who are joining us, those who are watching this stream, simply because I want you to continue to feel encouraged and motivated to do what you can. And we all want to work together. If there's anything that I can send your way, whether it's resources or articles, or for example, a survey instrument that you can deploy amongst youth in your town or city or country, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I know Tito and Sonia would also offer the same help because again, we're co-laboring to make a difference in this area. So as I was thinking about what I wanted to share, I wanted to first give you an update on research. Now, this research is US centric, but I would bet that these numbers are probably pretty similar when we think about Portuguese youth and youth in other countries as well. But keep that in mind that my numbers are specific to the United States, and maybe use it as a reference point. And we can talk during the question and answers period as to whether these numbers align with yours. Secondly, after providing a background on the research, I wanted to focus in on the concept of school climate, because I think the best way that we can reach students is in schools. Yes, ideally, we could reach them at home, but we kind of have a captive audience at school for 6-7 hours a day. And if we can get educators, teachers, administrators, counselors on board, of course, we want them to work with parents and others in the community, but I think that they could be the strongest force, especially if those adults, enlist the youth to help them with programming, with policy, with messaging strategies, with campaigns that can gain traction across the school, across the student body, and lead to positive changes. So with that said, let's get into this. We have new data to share. And if you look at the far right of the chart, this is school-based bullying. You can see that in 2021, the numbers were definitely down related to being bullied at school. This is because, of course, COVID. So many students were not at school. They were either in a hybrid situation or full-time learning from home. Only recently, in the last couple of months, we've gotten back on track, but we still have some schools that are operating hybrid or even fully remote. That is changing quickly, though. But just to give you some reference points, in 2019, 1 out of 2 say they'd been victimized at school with regard to bullying, and about 1 out of 10 had bullied others, whereas in 2021, it's about 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 who say they were victimized at school, and about 7% said that they bullied somebody else at school. These are middle schoolers and high schoolers across America. So then we want to switch gears to cyberbullying. And we think about these different sorts of apps that have gained popularity over the years, and some of them in recent times. I remember using Marco Polo, which is just a walkie-talkie type app, last summer for the first time. Twitter, we all know, Instagram, Snap, House Party, YouTube, WhatsApp, Twitch, and then the bottom row would be Discord, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, and TikTok, which has exploded in popularity. Many of the audience are familiar with it and perhaps use it frequently. So
can I ask a question to the audience?
Of course, please interrupt at any time.
Out of these symbols, and this question is for the audience, put in the comments the ones that you have never heard about. Because, for instance, for me, it was, I didn't know the first symbol. I knew the name, but I didn't know the symbol. So that was news for me. I would love to hear what the audience has learned about this.
Yes, definitely. And of course, it would differ depending on certain cultures. Maybe Discord isn't very popular. Maybe Marco Polo isn't very popular. Whereas, of course, WhatsApp is super popular, and TikTok, of course, is very popular as well. So we want to hear from you in the comments.
Yeah.
So when I speak to youth, and this is what I would encourage you to do also, when you speak with youth, it's really important to point out that the vast majority of kids on any of these platforms, they're not abusing the app or the platform. They're not misusing it. Most of them are acting relatively respectfully and at least neutrally. They're not hurting other people. They're just enjoying the app and then doing something else. Now, the point there is that a small proportion are the ones who are misusing the technology. And I'll share with you my statistics in a second. But ideally, if the majority are doing the right thing, we want to use that marshal peer pressure to get those who are on the fringes doing the wrong things online to get on board with the rest of us who are doing the right thing, the appropriate thing, the responsible and wise thing with the use of these apps and platforms. So, turning our attention to cyberbullying, you can see that the numbers have gone up. One might argue that this makes sense because of COVID, maybe everyone being at home, they're exposed to more victimization opportunities simply because they're spending more time with their screens. But you can see in 2019, it was about 17% who had been bullied online in the last month, whereas it is 23% this year who say that they've been bullied online in the last month. And you can see it's about 1 out of 20, about 5% say that they have cyberbullied somebody else. These are anonymous surveys, and so you would hope that they would feel free to honestly tell us about their aggression, about their offending, but that also could be underreported because they want to put their best foot forward and maybe present themselves in a socially desirable way. What is important to point out here is that of those who were cyberbullied in the last month, over half said it deeply affected their ability to learn and feel safe at school. My point with this is that some adults, they're well-meaning, but they say various things like, oh, just put your phone down, just delete the app. If you wouldn't spend so much time online, you wouldn't be dealing with these problems. Now that, of course, is very dismissive because many times they're still going to be having these issues online, even if they're not on the app specifically. And if they're not seeing what's being said, their imagination is going to take it to the worst possible extreme. Additionally, I think it's too difficult for us to ask them to separate their lives into offline and online. That can't be done anymore, even for adults. I mean, we live our lives, period. Some of it is using apps, some of it is interacting with people in our neighborhood, but it's all just how we live our lives. I also want to make sure on your radar is the topic of sexual-based bullying, because we've been studying this for a few years now, and it feels like the numbers are going up. You can see that girls are targeted more, but it's about 1 out of 4 girls, 24%, who said that someone else posted something mean or comments or gestures about them with the sexual meaning. That's key, with the sexual meaning. And you see that those who reported that they did it to others, these percentages are very small, but I don't want this to become normalized behavior. I want to make sure that any adult with a platform, whether it's a parent or guardian or caretaker at home, or whether it's an educator at school, they bring up the unacceptability of sexual-based comments or harm, or even memes that could be sexual but are very, very traumatic sometimes, depending on a person's sexual past.
Samir, can I ask a question there? Today, because the 20th of October is being celebrated as a global bullying prevention or tackling day, a lot of media came up with figures regarding bullying from different studies, from public authorities and whatnot. And one of the things that caught my eye was the fact that, for instance, they were separating cyberbullying incidents from sextortion. So they were not considering sextortion a cyberbullying incident. I would love to hear your views on that. What is sexual-based bullying? Can we consider sextortion, revenge porn, or also as a cyberbullying incident?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I would differentiate between sextortion and sexual-based bullying and some of the other forms of harm you mentioned. When it comes to sexual-based bullying, we think about cyberbullying, being intentional, being repeated, involving technology, and we look at the content. And if the content is sexual in nature, we label that as sexual-based bullying. Many times, cyberbullying might relate to a person's appearance or intellect or intelligence or religion or something like that. But with sexual-based bullying, it's focused specifically on some sort of sexual meaning. Now, you mentioned sextortion. And for those of you not familiar with that, it's simply where sexual videos or pictures gets released or accessed maybe inappropriately. Maybe a person's phone gets hacked or the cloud. And then that content is used against the people or the person featured in the picture or video because they're in a compromising sexual scene or position, used against them to extort money or additional sexual digital content, pictures and videos, or even sexual activity. So I would characterize sextortion as something completely separate, and I wouldn't file it under bullying. We have studied sextortion amongst a national sample of US youth, and we found that it was about 1 out of 20, about 5% say that they have dealt with sextortion. Now that seems like a very small number, but we're thinking about middle schoolers and high schoolers across America. And when you extrapolate that out from our sample to the millions and millions of people or millions and millions of teenagers in America, it's a sizable number. So sextortion, non-consensual sharing of intimate images, otherwise known as revenge porn, those sorts of harms, they are qualitatively different.
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't include them as a cyberbullying behavior?
I would not.
Okay.
Because they could be a one-off instance. You're dealing with sextortion just one time, whereas with cyberbullying, we tend to have that aspect of repetition.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about climate. And if you're not familiar with the term, all I am talking about specifically is in a school, you either have students who feel connected to each other, students who feel like they belong in this environment, as part of this community. You have students with high morale. You have students who feel like they're invested. You feel that students think the teachers treat everyone equally and fairly. All those elements. If that's there, you have a positive school climate. Whereas if those elements are missing or inadequate, well, then you have a negative or a poor school climate. And so we've studied this for a number of years. And originally, we definitely found out that when you have a positive school climate, you have less bullying, less cyberbullying, and even less sexting. Not only that, but other researchers before us, they found that a positive school climate is tied to higher academic achievement, less absenteeism, higher morale, etc. So moving forward from this, my colleague Justin Patchen and I wanted to look to see if there's a specific style of school climate that matters the most. So first, let me discuss parenting styles very briefly, and then I'll bring it back around to how this applies to the school. First off, there were some researchers many years ago. One was Diana Baumrind, a couple others, McCoby and Martin, and they published articles over the years and created a line of thinking that identified specific styles or ways that we all parent. And so thinking about parenting and thinking about these styles, they occur across two dimensions. First, we have disciplinary structure. Hold on one second, I'm sorry.
Follow.
Forgot to turn off the ringer on my iPad, and I appreciate your patience.
No problem.
There we go. Okay, so two dimensions of parenting. First is emotional support and warmth. And that simply means, okay, you're a parent or a guardian. How much do you care? How much do you demonstrate compassion and graciousness? Because all of our kids mess up. How warm are you? Or are you detached? Are you just sort of letting the kids sort of figure things out as they go and so forth? And then on the other side, we've got disciplinary structure. That relates to, do you have rules in your household? Do you have high expectations? Do you believe that students are going to rise to those expectations? By students, I mean your children. So when you have these two dimensions, you have four specific types of parenting styles. First is neglectful parenting. Neglectful parenting is in a household, it's very low on emotional support and warmth, and very low on structure and rules and expectations and discipline. You could have a permissive household where you're very high in, being loving and gracious and compassionate and patient and kind to your children, but you're also very low on structure. You're very low on having rules in place. You could have an authoritarian household where you're high on structure and rules and expectations, but you're very low on support and warmth and patience and graciousness to your children. And then what these researchers identified was that the best type of parenting is authoritative, where, yes, you have rules, you have structure, you have high expectations, but you do so in a context and in an environment that is marked by unconditional love, by warmth, and by support. So Justin and I wanted to see how this relates to school climate. Can these findings be applied similarly? And so we built this out in our own research. And just to summarize this chart, what we found for the most part was that in schools that were authoritative, again, high discipline, high structure, high rules, and also high support and high warmth, well, in those schools, there was much less bullying and cyberbullying. Whereas in the neglectful and in the permissive schools, there was much more bullying and cyberbullying. Relatedly, it was the same deal with school avoidance. Many more students wanted to avoid school in permissive and neglectful schools, whereas in authoritative schools, you had much less absenteeism and truancy. And then students felt the most safe in schools that were authoritative, and they felt the least safe in schools that were neglectful. So my point here is that, yes, we want to come alongside our students in schools. We want to be their biggest cheerleaders and their biggest fans. But at the same time, we cannot neglect believing that they're going to rise up to high standards that we set. So let's think through what this looks like. First off, it has been very challenging.
Can I just ask you a question, because a few have piled up here?
Please.
Bill, and this is probably regarding a comment that you have made earlier, and I'm sorry to have not picked it up.
No problem.
Says widespread increase, but will the reality be worse or not? I believe this is the difference between bullying and cyberbullying.
Yeah, so as we've studied this over many years, the numbers for cyberbullying have been much less than school-based bullying. And so for educators, for youth professionals, we never ever want to neglect school-based bullying, even though we see many media headlines focused specifically on the online type. That makes us think that cyberbullying is occurring a lot more often, but that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. The other question is from Ana Rita Carolina Silva. I'll try to see if I understand it. Most of the time, schools have a bully culture, that if you are different, you don't fit. Where is empathy? It's okay being different. It's okay. The school hides the cases of bullying instead of fitting this moral, emotional, and criminal, instead of fighting this moral, emotional, and criminal issue?
Yes. So, I mean, your point is so valid. I completely agree with you. And so some of the strategies I'll be sharing today, they're intending to cultivate more empathy in each other, students especially. And ideally, they recognize that just because someone is different, it doesn't mean that they're less valuable. Instead, we're all equally valuable, and our differences actually make us better together. So I'll be talking about that, and I'll point that out specifically when I get to it.
Just another one from Fernando Ferreira. Can you do something, for example, make a movie with students like the one that he leaves a link on for YouTube? Yeah, I think producing videos with students is one of the ways to raise awareness, but feel free to answer.
Absolutely. And I'll be sharing a couple of ideas specific to how we can allow youth to use their talents with their phones, for example, to help us with that. So that's a great point. Thank you very much. So as I mentioned, it's been very challenging with COVID and social distancing for schools and students to stay connected. They've been at home, they've been in quarantine, and maybe historically they believed that teachers and counselors cared about them, but it's just hard to demonstrate that care when everyone's at home. So in these environments, schools have had to innovate, and they've had to try different things to promote that school climate and to keep the students invested in the school and connected to teachers and to each other. One of the things we saw was, for example, these proms that would occur online, hashtag TikTok prom. And so, yes, we are all back in school. And I'm sure this spring semester, when we have proms and other dances like that, they will be in person. Maybe everyone will still be wearing masks. We will see. But the point with this is that still there are some people who won't be able to attend. Can we continue to use social media to make them feel included, to make them feel a part of our celebration of what's going on? There's countless ways for us to use social media in order to keep students connected, but many times the adults in charge, whether it's me or you, we don't think of the best ideas. We've got to get youth to tell us the best ideas so that we can get the other youth connected and invested in what we're trying to do at our school. You might have seen this, but we have Spirit Weeks. And Spirit Weeks have been done in schools for so many years. Wear your pajamas to school day, wear your favorite sports team jersey to school day. Well, that's great, but we should also use social media. For example, talk to us about your favorite Netflix show. Post a picture on Instagram related to the colors of the rainbow. Create a TikTok dance involving school colors or your favorite song, or using pink or blue. Let us know your favorite Snapchat filter. Show us a picture of yourself wearing school swag, school clothing, school logo or insignias. So that, again, is just a way for us to tap into their affection for and affinity for social media, but keep them connected to each other and with what we're trying to do, which is get everyone excited about being a part of the school, tying it into our identity. We've also seen schools come up with kindness pages and also create school accounts where they're sending out or pushing out various pieces of content, whether it's reminders not to bully, whether it's reminders about upcoming deadlines, about a scholarship or something like that, reminders about how we need to make people feel included in the lunchroom, etc. So use these accounts to reach students, because students are always staring at their phones. You might as well get them get these messages in front of their eyeballs, because their eyeballs are already on the screen. We've also had principals who will every single day create a new video for the student body. This happened a lot during COVID-19 while we were quarantined, but I think it should continue. It's not too hard for an administrator to just speak into their phone right when they park their car in the parking lot of the school, or if they walk to school while they're walking to school, just giving a shout out to everyone at school for the day, getting them excited, getting them pumped up, reminders to treat each other respectfully, etc. This specific principal, he gives a shout out to those who have a birthday every single day, because of course the school has records for whose birthday it is. I love that, and it makes the students feel very special. We also think about anti-bullying clubs. This is one club that I work with in Pennsylvania. It Takes One. I love the name of that because it just takes one person to stand up for what's right, to make a difference in the school community. And then ideally, the rest of the students jump on board. But the trick here is that we need to make sure that part of our student club here is those students who are leaders, who have a platform, who are somewhat popular, and who genuinely care about making sure everyone is kind to each other. If it's just the students who are the marginalized students, it's not going to gain traction. It's not going to really grow. I wish it would, but we have to understand that the reality is that it will grow much quicker and do much better if we have students who are leaders. I love the slogan, "See something, say something." Here in America, we've been using that slogan or phrase ever since September 11th, 2001, because we had that terrorist attack. And so this is, of course, shared in airports and in restaurants and public places, because the authorities want to know if we see anything amiss or suspicious. But this has got to be the message that we're sharing at school, but also online. So many of our students get together on Discord channels or Minecraft channels or servers and connect with each other. They're on Twitch streaming together or in FaceTime communications, etc. So my point here is that if they see something amiss, they should let someone know. They shouldn't just say, oh, someone else is going to speak up about that, or it's not my responsibility. I'm going to mind my own business so I don't have to deal with any of the fallout. No, that's inappropriate. And we need to try to save others from victimization by saying something if we see something.
Carol Phillips is saying, I was made aware of this when researching the Oveo's bullying prevention program in schools and visited schools in Pennsylvania. And I believe she's referring to this campaign, See Something, Say Something.
Or even the It Takes One Club. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Carol, for that. I also like the idea of what's called purposed pairing. You're being intentional about pairing a couple students together. Now, one of the students is older and the other student is younger. So you might consider intentionally pairing a 5th grader with a 1st grader, an 8th grader with a 6th grader, a 12th grader with a 9th grader. That older student shows the younger student about behavioral expectations, about standards of conduct, and also gets that younger student excited to be a part of the school. And the younger student now has another older student as a point of contact in case they're ever bullied or harassed or dealing with any other problem. And if they feel uncomfortable going to an adult, well, they have this partner that they can go to. So it's good for both parties because the older student grows in leadership skills and the younger student learns as to the expectations on campus or at school and between each other, even online, and also can go to this older student for help if the case is needed or if the need is occurring. I alluded to this earlier, but many times us adults, we come up with these grand ideas for policies and programs that we think will work in our school. Some of them work, some of them fail. I think it's so much more valuable if we can create a formal student advisory board. That way we are empowering the students and giving them a voice to let us know about unsafe areas on campus, about apps or platforms that are demonstrating an increase in bullying. They will let us know about various conflicts between groups of students, etc. But if we never create this formal advisory board, then they never think that we actually care and are interested in what they have to say. They just say, well, I'm sure the adults are going to do something about this and they don't really ask us our opinion, so we're just going to keep quiet. No, let's validate their voice and give them a chance to speak up. And what will be so shocking is all of the things that they tell you that you had no clue about. So do create a student advisory board.
Do you have a process to run student advisory boards? How do you select the students? How it is organized?
Yeah, in these situations, ideally you're able to identify a group or a cadre of maybe 10 to 15 student leaders or just individuals, maybe they're nominated by teachers. And then you do need to have some point person adult who can hold them accountable, whether it's the high school counselor who says, all right, I'm creating this student advisory board based on nominations. Now that I've gotten 15, 20 nominations, I'm going to narrow it down to 10, 15. And then we're going to meet on a monthly basis. We're going to get together. I'll get donuts, maybe coffee or orange juice, and we'll just sit for an hour before school starts and we'll talk about these specific issues that we think are relevant and what we want to do. And you can let us know, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, this is a better idea. So that's pretty much how it operates. But we do need that adult keeping them accountable, organizing these meetings, etc.
Probably somebody that the students recognize as somebody that is trustworthy and with whom they feel comfortable going to and so forth.
Absolutely. Someone who's known for being inclusive, someone who's known for never being condescending in how they speak to students. Exactly.
Yeah. Fernando Ferreira, yes, make the difference in a good way. How we teach this to our students?
Oh, I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Make the difference in a good way. How do we teach this to our students? I believe you were saying, like the club that you've mentioned is one of the ways that you can motivate students to act and to raise empathy and situations like this. I believe the empathy is what Fernando Ferreira is talking about.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And let's say that you're a student who becomes part of this advisory board. I'm sure that many other students are probably going to feel at least a little bit jealous. Like, this is a pretty cool opportunity. You can write about it when you're applying for college, about how you made a difference in your school. And so hopefully they will be inspired to, rise up and behave maybe a little bit better and try to be an example for other students in their school community.
Mm-hmm.
I also think about how many students have grown up in theater or drama, and we should tap into their skills and their talents and their abilities by asking students themselves who have grown up in theater or drama to come up with some sort of role playing or skit or scenario that depicts or displays cyberbullying or dating violence or texting while driving or sexting or some of these other issues that you might be concerned about. If the adults tried to do this, it would fail. They would just laugh at us. But if the students are doing it, it could be very powerful and compelling and relatable to all the other students in the classroom or in the auditorium.
Christian Miranda is saying, great idea to involve the kids. They have so much to say about this. Love the idea of the advisory board.
They do have a lot to say. We just have to give them a chance and convey that we care about their words.
Absolutely.
I mentioned that many students grew up in theater. Well, many students grew up in dance as well, myself included. And so can we specifically tap or enlist those students to maybe create a flash mob or an anti-bullying lip dub? If you go onto YouTube and you type in anti-bullying flash mob or anti-bullying lip dub, you'll find a number of examples of these that are really well done by students. And they provide a point of they really provide an event around which everyone else can rally. And it then gives those students the moment and the opportunity to share with everybody else what they care about, whether it's, hey, we need more kindness. We need more inclusivity here. We need people to be less cruel to each other, whatever it could be. But please take a look at those videos because they're very inspiring. And if you organize a group of students to do it, it could be very powerful and could help change the climate at your school. By the way, Justin and I have compiled a list of our favorite lip dubs and anti-bullying flash mobs. So if you drop us an email or message me later, I'm happy to send those to you.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I also think it's important for every student at school to have a caring connection with another student with another adult at school. So if I came to your school and I pulled aside one of the students and I said, hello, if you were ever dealing with something that was incredibly stressful, online, at home, here at school, who is the adult here that you would go to? And I hope within just a few seconds, a name pops in their head. And if it doesn't, I think that's a problem. I think that we have to correct that because every student should have at least one trusted adult, like Tito was saying, that they can go to.
Mm-hmm.
We've also seen these kindness movements where it's not enough to not be mean or cruel towards other people. No, what we need for you to do is actually be respectful, be complimentary, be encouraging, be kind. And so we've seen this on social media. This is a Honors College HC compliments page we have. It gets passed on to the next generation of students year after year after year. You can see that I was featured on it many years ago. But it's a pretty cool thing because it's all anonymous. I don't know who's behind the page, but it definitely brightened my day. It made my whole week because I thought to myself, my goodness, someone actually noticed me. That's pretty amazing. We've seen it on Instagram as well. If you just do a search on Instagram for, compliments pages, you'll find a bunch of them. And you see that every day or every few hours, another student is recognized, celebrated. Maybe you do it with a picture from their profile or from their account. Maybe you do it with the school logo, whatever you want. But the point is that this is just one way we can use social media to make kindness go viral. We've also seen some youth who have created various campaigns to try to make a difference at their school. This is Caitlin Hackey, and she came up with Positive Post-it Day. Now, I don't have time to share with you this video or other videos, but please email me and I'm happy to send them to you. My point with this is that many educators, many adults, they're often perhaps showing videos of teens who have ruined their lives by what they've done because they're trying to promote regret. They're trying to deter other students from doing the same thing. And I think that has some value, but I think what is much more valuable is if we show our students stories of other students doing epic things, doing legendary things, doing things to try to make a difference on their school campus. In this case, creating positive Postits where they then paste them all over the lockers or the windows at school to try to encourage or lift the spirits of other students. And I'm sure other students thought, oh, this is lame. This is ridiculous. No one's going to care. It's very uncool. But I give Caitlin so many props, so much respect because she actually tried to make a difference in her campus. And that counts for a lot.
Absolutely. Actually, on our book, we have a chapter in which we outline some of those examples. I remember a student from a school that created a Twitter account devoted to that. Each day he would compliment a fellow student on something. So it's a way of promoting kindness, I believe, and which is something that we should never get tired of.
Absolutely. And, do check out Tito and Sonia's book. I'm sure he'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that when we wrap up. But, those examples are so powerful because I believe youth are looking around to be inspired. That's why they love movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, I love those movies too, and you probably do as well. But the point is that we're always looking to be inspired. Well, let's give our students stories of other youth doing inspiring things, and maybe they will feel like they can do something similar. This is Cameron Remis, and he's 13, but he knows how to sew. And believe it or not, from scratch, he's able to sew these stuffed animals, and then he goes into children's hospitals and he gives them to those children who are suffering from some sort of debilitating disease, whether it's cancer or something like that. I love that story. I wouldn't know how to make a stuffed animal, but I'm sure I have some talents that could be used to benefit and to be a blessing to others. Maybe if I'm 13 and I hear this story, I would be similarly inspired to use my talents accordingly. How are you spending time with students outside of the classroom? I play sports with students outside of the classroom. So even tonight we have ultimate frisbee at 7:30 p.m. And so I'll go to campus and I'll spend time with students. And the cool thing about spending time with students outside of the school walls is that there's no pressure. You can just have conversations and everyone can just be how they are. And I've been able to develop these really cool mentorship relationships with students who never took a class with me, but who I played sports with on the fields. And believe it or not, I've been to multiple weddings because of the relationship that we built, where they wanted to invite me just because they knew how much I cared about them because of our simple conversations on the sidelines before playing football or before playing ultimate frisbee. We also see some schools come up with poster contests. Here's a poster that maybe a very young child would create. Here's another poster that another young child might create related to bullying or cyberbullying. Here's another one, reminding us to, before you speak, make sure that it's true, helpful. Is it insulting? If not, don't say it. Is it necessary? Well, yeah, then say it. Is it kind? Use your words, use your power to make a change, make a difference. I love that. Now, if your students are older and they have phones, well, then you could ask them to come up with a public service announcement. Here's one devoted to cyberbullying, another one devoted to cyberbullying, one devoted to teen dating violence, another devoted to sexting. So my point here is that even in class, yes, you have to cover your lesson plan, but we care about these issues. So can you specifically assign them the task of working with a small group of other students to create a public service announcement related to these forms of harm? And then we'll be able to share them. We'll be able to post them on YouTube, maybe on the school webpage, maybe on school social media accounts. Maybe we'll give out awards for first, second, and third place. That gets the students involved again to create this content, which is so very valuable. I think it's also really important to remind our students that screenshots and screen recordings, or yeah, that's what I would say. They're very important. So when it comes to screen recordings and screenshots, we all know how to do so on maybe our phone, but do we know that we can do it on a Kindle, on a PlayStation, on an Xbox, on an iWatch? Do we know how to take a screen recording of a live stream, of a TikTok video, of an Instagram story, things like that are more than just a screen, like a shot? We need that digital evidence. The school needs that digital evidence in order to do their investigation. Social media needs that digital evidence in order for them to maybe discipline someone with a 1-day ban or a 30-day ban based on their offense, maybe to work with law enforcement, etc. Maybe to take the humiliating picture down or the hurtful words down. They need the screenshot. They need the evidence. So constantly remind your students to take the evidence, to create the evidence. And for example, on Snap or Snapchat, if you take a screenshot, the other person gets a warning that you took a screenshot. But who cares? They deserve to be busted if they're doing things that are inappropriate, unacceptable, harmful towards others. So we can do that on iPhones. We can do it on Android phones as well. Make sure your students know how to do it on all of their devices. So very important.
Just going to say that Ana Maria Martorelli is saying good job. And Luis Fernandes using Cyberbullying.pt account says great strategies. Thanks for the inspiration.
Absolutely. Definitely check out Cyberbullying.pt for additional strategies that you can specifically implement. So as I get close to wrapping up here, I want to talk about the identity at a school. So when I was in high school, we were known as the Lake Howell Silverhawks, the Silverhawks. So we were given all these messages from the principal and from the teachers that we were to soar above, like a hawk, like a bird. We were to rise above. So, that sort of messaging, it did plant seeds in our minds, and it was supposed to be reflected in our behavior. We were supposed to do the right thing. We were supposed to act in a mature fashion. We were supposed to behave with integrity and character, all because that's what a Silverhawk does. And so I think it's really important for us to make sure that we tie our efforts into the identity of the school. We need to convey that, hey, this is just what we do around here. We treat each other with respect. We treat each other with empathy, understanding that all of us are fighting a hard battle. All of us have insecurities. All of us have wounds from the past. All of us are dealing with parents or guardians who really annoy us and frustrate us sometimes. Some of us might be dealing with money problems. Some of us have been dealing with addiction, addiction in our family, whether it's a mom or a dad or a loved one or a guardian or grandparent. Some of us have dealt with illnesses and have even had loved ones lose their lives because of COVID or some of these recent issues that we've had. So all of this has to be tied into, hey, as Silverhawks or as Dolphins or Rams or Cardinals, whatever your school is, this is what we care about. This is what we do. This is how we are as individuals and as members of this community. Plus, we need to move from a certain mentality that many students have, which is, oh, I shouldn't do that because I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get suspended. I'm going to have to go to detention or Saturday school. That's not great. We want them to be deterred, not because there's a penalty, but because they're better than that. Like they wouldn't do that because they're a Silverhawk. They wouldn't do that because they're now in high school and they're not a toddler anymore. They wouldn't do that because it's not cool to do that. It's very lame to do that, to act in such a juvenile fashion. And then finally, we need to have constant reminders like, yeah, we're better than that. We are classier than that. We are more mature than that. We take the high road. We take the narrow road. However you want to phrase it, it has to be repeated. It has to be something that they see all around them with slogans or quotes on the wall, even above the urinals in the bathroom, even with the social media content that you push out on the channels. Constant reminders. And then again, it continues to plant seeds in their minds. And then it affects their thoughts, which then affects their attitudes, which then affects their actions. Constant reminders. So just keep it up. So with that said, because I want to save some time for some Q&A, that's my contact information. It's very easy to find me online. So what I will do now is stop sharing, or maybe I'll just ask Tito to stop sharing, and then you can just see me.
Yes. I ask our audience if they have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments, and we'll bring them into the screen.
I have one.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Sonia.
Yeah, when you were talking about the parenting styles relate to the school climate, I was wondering if there were also some findings between relationship between parenting styles and the involvement as bullies or victims, or it was just on school climate.
Yeah, so in this research, we just looked at school climate, but there has been a lot of research done involving, parents and how involved they are. For example, do they monitor? Do they have conversations with their children about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate? Do they work together to set limits and have rules in place? Or are they very dogmatic and say, it's my way or the highway? Research has shown that appropriate parenting definitely leads to less behavioral problems.
I would complement what Samir has just said. There are in Europe, there is the EU Kids online group led by Sonny Livingston, and they have published a paper specifically on parenting styles applied to digital technology used by children. Also, I would recommend a piece by Alexandra Samuel in the US that also approaches parenting styles as they relate to the use of technology by kids. I have a question that goes back to the beginning of your presentation. You mentioned that the case of Ryan Patrick Halligan was something that triggered you to get interested on the topic. And one of the debates that there is the relationship between suicide and bullying and cyberbullying. People are using the term bullycide sometimes, and I would like to understand your views. Does bully and cyberbullying kill children? Drives them to suicide, or is it mental illness, or is it a combination of both? What's the role of bullying and cyberbullying in suicide cases?
Thank you, Tito, for asking that question. It is an important one because there's been a lot of misinformation around the topic as well. I would not say that there's a causal relationship between bullying and suicide because so many individuals have been bullied and yet they haven't taken their life. Now, with that said, as we've studied this, it seems that bullying or cyberbullying, when it does happen, it's just the straw that breaks the proverbial camel's back. If you're familiar with that expression, it's just one more thing that piles onto a lot of stress. And a lot of stress is atypical. For example, a child might be struggling deeply with mental health issues, might be on psychotropic medication, might be clinically depressed. And then when they're bullied, maybe, yes, it then moves them in that direction where they might attempt suicide or have additional suicidal thoughts. We have studied it and published a couple of papers on the relationship, and there is a strong correlation between the two. But when it comes to someone actually taking their lives, well, in those situations, I do believe that it's an atypical situation and that youth is under an unbelievable and disproportionate amount of stress and pain.
Okay. Carol Phillips is asking a question. Has any research been carried out in light of the pandemic into the increase or decrease in cyberbullying? I ask as children have been home more with access to technology when schools have been closed, or has the situation in the US been different to that in the UK, where children have missed a substantial amount of schooling in the past 18 months and cyberbullying still taking place?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And my colleague Justin just wrote a recent blog about this. And so, Carol, if you want to message me, I can send you that, or just go to cyberbullying.org and you'll see the recent blog related to that. But generally speaking, I was expecting a huge uptick in cyberbullying because of the pandemic, but that actually wasn't the case, at least in our data. I'm sure that findings are mixed as we look at different populations. There's this one study done by Tracy Valancourt over in Canada, and her numbers were mixed as compared to ours. So this phenomenon, I think, of COVID, it's really complicated the matter, but I wouldn't say that it's led to this great increase by any stretch.
Okay. In Portugal, it has been reported that during the pandemic, cyberbullying cases have risen. About 70% of children have been saying that they have been victims of cyberbullying, which I believe is a huge number and makes me doubt some of those numbers. Do you have situations in the US, as we have in Portugal, in which studies come out and are they are not representative of the general population or even of a group, but they are reported by the media as country figures?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely happens. And so we have to take care to look at the research methodology and make sure that it's representative. And Tito, back to that statistic, what I'm thinking for why we haven't seen personally a huge uptick is because, as you know, there's a strong overlap between school bullying and cyberbullying. So if we remove school from the equation, well, then the youth aren't really in environments where there could be a lot of conflict naturally occurring, which would then continue online. And so that makes me think it's reasonable to believe that, yeah, because we just don't have students getting involved in disagreements and misunderstandings as much at school or after school, we're going to see less cyberbullying as compared to thinking it's going to explode in frequency.
Okay. This brings me to another question that here in Portugal we've been trying to press, which is we have plenty of studies, but we don't have a global picture of the situation in the country. We don't have a picture of the situation in a given municipality. What can we do in order to press public authorities, government, public officials, to make them become aware of the importance of having a national diagnosis from which we can plan? Otherwise, we'll be drawing in the air,
That's such an important point. I feel like legislators and politicians, if they want to get involved in this topic, they're very quick to prescribe laws and sanctions. But that, I think, is a waste of time, because students are not typically deterred by laws and sanctions because they're acting in the moment based on their emotions. So what I would rather see is for us to have laws which require schools to do a number of things. Sonia earlier mentioned social and emotional learning. We have anonymous report systems. We have school climate programming. You could have conflict resolution. You could have digital citizenship curricula being mandated. See, a law can really require all of these public schools to actually do all the things that can prevent cyberbullying. But if they don't require that, then schools are just going to focus on reading, writing, science, social studies, history, etc., and maybe neglect some of these very important components.
Great. Carol Phillips is saying, thank you, Samir. I'll contact you on LinkedIn. I agree, Tito, research does not always relate to what is going on the ground. Meanwhile, Edith Utete from Zimbabwe has joined us and says, hello, Tito and Sonia, and also says great insights to what you've been telling us. And another, and for me, will be the final question, unless somebody from the audience has a question to ask. You mentioned one-day bans and 30-day bans. One of the things that we've been struggling here in Portugal is what does a ban teach? Basically, it provides the student, the aggressor, a one-day holiday or a 30-day holiday. I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so when I speak about bans, 1 day or 30 days, I'm talking about a ban from the social media platform. So they miss out on the benefits of being on the platform, whether it's Twitch or TikTok or whatever. But more related to that, I want to point out that maybe still bans aren't the best idea, because let's say someone makes a mistake. Well, they get banned, but they just made a mistake. It was an innocent mistake, or maybe they didn't think about the consequences of their actions. But all of a sudden when you ban someone, you kind of make an enemy out of them. They become resentful. They might then hate the app or hate the people on the app. So that might embolden them to be even more cruel or even more hurtful. So what I've been thinking about, and I'm trying to write this out in a short piece, which will turn out into a blog or an article, is there a way, or what is the role of rehabilitation when we have those who cyberbully, when we have those who offend online? Now, of course, if it's heinous, if it's incredibly offensive and obscene, well, yes, then we won't try to rehabilitate. But are there some students who are deserving of rehabilitation, to bring them back into the community, to bring them back into the fold with those expectations that, yes, you made a mistake, but we're believing you won't make a mistake again?
Because I think that those that are the aggressors, they also need help. I mean, if they have a violent behavior, there must be something at the source of that behavior that needs to be addressed. Ana Maria Martorella from Argentina says, thank you very much. Marcia Lemos from Coimbra in Portugal says, excellent insights and sharing. Thank you for your work. Marcia is also with us usually when one of the guests is a lawyer, because she's a lawyer, so she has the law background to help us out. We have already passed the hour, 7 minutes. I'm sorry for that, Samir. But I would like to ask you one final question, which is to leave us with a recommendation, a tip, or a guideline for our audience, in which they can, after the session, put it into practice. Our audience is mainly parents and educators, teachers, and professionals that work with children. But before you answer, let me say that introduce tomorrow's session. We'll have 3 guests, Katia Vaz, Julia Vinhas, and Raquel Raimundo. They're the 3 of them from Portugal, and they have all of them. They have authored each a board game on bullying prevention. The one by Raquel Raimundo is also on emotional learning, and they'll be talking about the role of games, pedagogic games in prevention and tackling bullying and cyberbullying. So tomorrow we'll be speaking in Portuguese at 9:30 p.m. Portuguese time, and in Brazil, for instance, that will be 5:30 in the afternoon. So let me just see, because people have commented. Carol says, thank you for this opportunity to listen this evening. Thank you, Carol, for being with us. Edith Utete says, Samir, you bring great perspectives. Thank you. And I also have to agree with her. You've left us here with a huge number of suggestions that will be easy to put into practice. They are not complicated. The only thing we need is somebody willing to put them into practice. And Luis Fernandes says, fantastic session. Thanks, Samir. So back to you, your final tip, final thought, recommendation, or guideline that you'd like to leave us.
Sure. And this is a simple one, and I'm sure you cover it in your book. And because it's so simple, everyone can do it. And that's simply the following. When you're chatting with students, when you're chatting with your own kids, please do not convey, even indirectly, judgment or criticism or blame when you discuss technology. Just talk about it like you're talking about your favorite sports team. Get them to understand that you know that there are positives to social media. There are positives to them being on the phone or the gaming console that they love. There are definitely benefits there. But if they think that you only see it as a waste of time or nonsense, they're never going to open up to you about their difficulties and struggles. So don't convey any blame. Don't convey any judgment. Just talk to them about the positives and even how you're using technology. And then over time, you can talk about the negatives. And hopefully they will feel comfortable coming to you when they experience any messages or content that makes them feel threatened or uncomfortable or harassed in some capacity.
Samir, thank you very, very much for having accepted to be here with us and for being here, sharing your knowledge, which is huge. And we have you in high regard and consideration. And it's always a pleasure to learn from you, and an honor to have you as a guest on this session. Sonia, I'm sure you want to say something as well.
I just want to thank you so much for sharing so many good practice. There are such simple initiatives that we can implement in school, and they are simple, but they can make a huge difference. And you left us with an excellent idea for a title for a next section. That one phrase you said, make kindness go viral. So I'm going to put that in mind. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you all for your efforts. Continue to fight the good fight. Everyone, please check out Cyberbullying.pt, and we'll do good work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Still some additional comments. Christian Miranda says, great session. Thank you all. Carlos Menezes says, thanks for the insights. And Abilio Carvalho says, excellent live, which I think it's true. And thank you for being here with us. I remind you, visit cyberbullying.org, which is the Cyberbullying Research Center website that Samir is a co-director. There is plenty of information there on the topic, so go there and learn. Samir, once again, thank you very, very much,
Thank you so much.
have a great week.
You as
Bye.
well.
Goodbye.